When it comes to professional athletes, how do we decide who gets afforded patience and who doesn't? How do we balance expectations versus reality? How do we decide who's worth investing in and who isn't? These may all seem like relatively simple questions on the surface, but the reality is that they often aren't. There are so many factors that dictate whether or not a player will succeed, whether or not he will be allowed the runway to develop, whether or not he's worth investing cap space or draft capital into. There's often never a true one-to-one situation or comparison because each and every situation comes with particular caveats, provisions, details, whatever, what have you. From location, meaning where you play, to current roster construction and coaching staff, any number of things can have an impact or heavily dictate whether or not a player will reach his potential. In the case of the NBA, where opportunities may not be as flush as other pro sports leagues, this is perhaps even more apparent. How you enter the league matters in the context of opportunities typically given, as does where you end up, especially for draft picks. Ordinarily, if you are being taken towards the top of a draft, you can generally rest assured that you will have more opportunities to develop than if you were taken towards the end of the first round or into the second. This is because the teams that select towards the top typically are there for a reason, whether they are in a rebuild or just plain suck. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some rare occasions when a team that is either a title contender or very close to it may find itself selecting up on the top of the draft, whether that be due to an ungodly amount of injury or somehow traded into it. Hell, the 2019-20 Golden State Warriors are a perfect example of this. Steph Curry missed all but 5 games. Draymond Green was only available for 43. Klay Thompson missed the entire season, and there were a number of other things that occurred, whether it be the acquisition of Andrew Wiggins or the COVID pandemic halting the season early. This resulted in a 15-50 record, which led to them selecting second overall. Just 2 seasons later, they won their 7th NBA championship. The moral is that they really didn't belong there, but the right circumstances occurred, and that's where they ended up. But most of the time, the teams in the lottery are selecting around the top because they belong there. That was the case for the Cleveland Cavaliers back during the same 2020 NBA draft when they made Isaac Okoro the 5th overall pick. Now, this franchise was in a very different place than it is now. They were knee-deep into a rebuild and didn't really have a true franchise centerpiece to bank on. Kevin Love was a shell of his former self, despite being paid like one of the best players in basketball. Colin Sexton had shown promise, but was by no means a core building block, and Darius Garland was coming off a season in which he was literally being named the worst player in the league. Times were rough. We were down bad. The Cavs were never truly banking on Isaac Okoro to change that, but he was supposed to help them take another step forward, and he was given about as much runway as any rookie ever has. Okoro actually led all rookies in minutes per game during that very unusual season. His 32.4 minutes per game are actually the 11th most all-time for a 5th overall pick in their inaugural campaign. What did he do during the tumultuous 2020-21 season? Well, he averaged 9.6 points, 3.1 rebounds, and 1.9 assists while completing 42% of his field goals, including a lowly 29% from three-point distance. Absolutely nothing to write home about, but there were certainly instances in which Okoro showed his potential as a 3-and-D wing. His 32-point outburst against the Phoenix Suns remains his career high in scoring. He did it all in that game. He flashed his potential as a ball handler, firing off numerous passes that resulted in assists. He took opponents off the dribble. He knocked down catch-and-shoot triples, and he even displayed semblances of a pull-up jumper, knocking down a step back or two in the process. He closed out the season with a very solid month of May in which he averaged 16.6 points, 4.3 rebounds, and 3 assists. Now, he wasn't necessarily efficient as evidenced by his 42.1% field goal percentage, including 30.2% from beyond the arc, but he showed what he could do with even more opportunities. Fun fact, the 14 field goal attempts per game that he averaged during that 9-game stretch remains the single highest amount of any individual month of his career. He had free reign due to a massive amount of injuries to others. It seemed as if he could continue to improve and develop as long as he was given the opportunity, but then a number of moves were made during the 2021 offseason period, namely the acquisition of Ricky Rubio and Lauri Markkanen, the man who ended up usurping Okoro and taking his place within the starting lineup, and justifiably so, for being honest. Lauri was a better fit and gave the team more size to help combat the undersized franchise backcourt pairing of Collin Sexton and Darius Garland. This in addition to the drafting of a real franchise pillar in Evan Mobley. Okoro was swiftly moved to the bench, but remained there for only 11 games as the 2021-22 iteration of the Cleveland Cavaliers suffered catastrophic injuries. First to Collin Sexton, who was entering a contract year himself at the time, and then Ricky Rubio not too long after. This pressed Okoro back into the starting unit, albeit as the team's starting shooting guard, where he would play 72% of his minutes at that season. The results were very up and down. His best individual stretch was during the month of December, where he put up 11.2 points per game and shot 54.5% from the field, including 45.7% from distance. That was the only month of the season, though, in which he averaged double-digit points despite being given a hefty amount of minutes to boot. Things weren't much better in the play-in games, in which he was effectively benched for Caris LeVert, playing just 17.6 minutes per game and averaging just 3 points per game. It was a brutal way to end the year. And things changed in a major way when Cleveland acquired Donovan Mitchell during the 2022-23 offseason period. The team pretty much pushed their chips in and shifted the focus from developing young talent to winning and returning to playoff contention. Lauri Markkanen and Collin Sexton, two players who were in front of Okoro on the depth chart, may have departed, but the team had seen enough in Caris LeVert to name him the starter heading into the season. And while Okoro would once again be pulled into the role of starter as the season wore on, his minute totals would fluctuate. This led to a career low 21.7 minutes per game and 6.4 points per game. There were moments when things finally seemed to click, like his game-winning three-pointer over the Brooklyn Nets, which just so happens to be one of my favorite all-time endings to any regular season game. But for every stretch where he would knock down the three ball consistently, there were just as many stretches where he was either an offensive liability or failed to capitalize on all the space being afforded to him by opponents. This came to a head in the Cavs playoff series against the New York Knicks, in which Okoro struggled to knock down outside shots right out of the gate and was swiftly pulled in favor of LeVert. An increasingly common occurrence, it seems. He would average just 6.4 points and shoot just 30.8% from range. It was awful to see and a big reason why the Cavs failed to win more than one game that series. Following that series, the Cavs began to try and patch up some of their holes. They acquired Max Strus, a direct competitor for minutes for Okoro. They brought in George Niang and Tristan Thompson. The question became who would start at the three. Would it be Okoro, LeVert, or Strus? And as we all know, Strus got the nod. But even with that occurring, Okoro still managed to start 42 more games. He actually started to showcase improvement in his perimeter shot, going from 36.3% to 39.1% during the regular season. His 1.2 made triples per game were a career best. There were real reasons to believe he had improved a bit in this regard. The question was now, could he do it in a playoff setting? Plain and simple, he didn't. Okoro averaged even fewer points this time around as he contributed just 5.4 points and shot just 25.7% from three-point range in 12 games, 7 of them actually being starts. He failed to capitalize on the space he was given due to the lack of respect from opponents. This is a large reason why we are here right now, waiting to see what will end up happening to Okoro in regards to his contract negotiations. He has been given opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to prove he belongs and that he is an indispensable piece of this team. Some of these opportunities weren't even by design, but nevertheless, he received them. The questions that loom large in my mind always seem to go back to how we decide who deserves patience and who doesn't. Does what Isaac Okoro has looked like now in back-to-back postseasons outweigh any potential development he has shown over the last few years during the regular season? Fair question to me. He now holds postseason averages of 5.8 points, 1.6 rebounds, and 1 assist, while completing just 38.7% of his field goals, including 27.1% from the perimeter. He has just 13 of 48 from deep, 13 of 52 if you expand things to include the 2021-22 play-in tournament games. That is 19 career non-regular season appearances, but we will be generous and keep that part out. Conversely, Okoro has averaged 8.5 points, 2.9 boards, and 1.7 assists, and is a lifetime 46.7% from the field, including 34.7% shooter from distance during the regular season. And if you remove his very inefficient rookie year, that number rises to an efficient 48% and 37% respectively. That's over the span of 212 games. Despite having a 3-point percentage that seems to indicate that he is slowly but surely improving, just how effective is he as a shooter? I think that this is a question we have all pondered at one point or another. Take his 39.1% from this past regular season, for instance. Now, on the surface, it appears that he has rounded a corner and has finally begun to morph into that perimeter marksman that the Cavs have always wanted him to be. But dig a little deeper, and it's not as simple as that. The first big indicator is overall volume. He only took 3.1 attempts per game last season and 4.1 per 36 minutes. Is that truly enough volume to suggest he's improved? I think so, considering he knocked down a career best 84 triples despite finishing with one more tip more than his previous career high of 214 back during his rookie season. The next big piece of information is just how much defensive attention he received on these attempts. And the short answer is basically none. Okoro has attempted a grand total of 757 total regular season triples in his career. Of those 757, just 9 were deemed what the NBA considers to be tightly defended. This means that the remaining 748 were either considered open or wide open, meaning on 748 of his attempts, or rather 98.8% of his attempts, have come when a defender is 4 or more feet away. They ain't looking at him. He is not a respected shooter, like at all. We could all live with that if you were making defenses pay for it more often than not, and to be honest, I think he has, at least during the regular season. But with that being the case, it will ultimately mean little to the average fan if he doesn't do it in the playoffs, and so far he just hasn't. As mentioned before, he has 13 of 48 from range over the span of 17 career playoff outings. Only one, yes, one of those attempts was considered tightly defended. He has been given an immense amount of space and has failed to capitalize in back-to-back postseasons. Does his 17-game postseason sample size outweigh his last 212 regular season games? That, my friends, is up for you to decide. Now, he has always been a pretty stout defender. B-Ball Index, one of the most recognized and reputable stat hubs in the sport, has a lot of useful information regarding this particular subject. Per B-Ball Index, Okoro ranks second for the 2020 draft class in matchup difficulty, right behind Jaden McDaniels. He ranks 7th among the 2020 class in their D LeBron category. He has maintained a pristine A+ ranking in all 4 years of his pro career. He has also always taken on the best perimeter assignment, no matter how difficult. And while he has been burned a number of times, his perimeter defense remains a valuable asset as perhaps his best skill, especially for a team that features an undersized backcourt that doesn't exactly excel in this area. He has never received an official vote for an all-defensive team, but he has been as sturdy as they come on that end. So what we have here essentially is a player who many just don't know how to categorize. Is he an elite perimeter defender? Is he a 3-and-D wing? Is he a flat-out bust? It's really hard to say. Probably depends upon who is evaluating him and through what lens. Coaching is another lost element in this. Isaac Okoro has done himself no favors at times, but one thing is undeniably true in my opinion. JB Bickerstaff and his slow, grinded out pace never truly made sense for a player like Okoro. It mostly relegated him to spotting up or standing around in the corners just trying to get out of the damn way. It was not pretty for him at times. There are parts of his game that were never fully tapped into during the Bickerstaff era. Ball handling, cutting, playmaking, these are all things that at one point or another he has shown flashes of, but was never truly unlocked. Bickerstaff just didn't seem to know how to best utilize him, and it shows. And finishing with a bottom 7 pace each year under Bickerstaff was always going to be harmful to a player like Okoro who thrives off of quick pace and transition baskets. But is JB Bickerstaff to blame for all of Okoro's woes? Absolutely not. JB cannot take and make shots for him. And when you look at things from a sheer monetary standpoint, Okoro isn't left with a lot of options. It seems as though his only real options are to sign his $11.8 billion qualifying offer and bet on himself, risking injury in the process, or sign a multi-year offer that may be below what he feels his market value is. It's hard to truly say without being in the room where it happens. The team could always opt to find a trade suitor, but without any real cap space teams left, it seems that he just doesn't have much market outside of Cleveland right now. And when Okoro looks at his draft day peers, I am sure he doesn't feel much better about things. Of the 4 players selected before him, 3 have been given substantial raises. Anthony Edwards got maxed out, as did LaMelo Ball. Patrick Williams got $18 million a year. The only one not extended was James Wiseman, a complete bust. 7 of the top 10 picks have received extensions. Number 1, as we already suggested, Ant-Man, 5-year, $260 million. Number 3, LaMelo Ball, 5-year, $260 million. Number 4 pick, Patrick Williams, 5 years, $90 million. Number 6, Onyeka Okongwu, 4 years, $62 million. Number 8, Obi Toppin, 4 years, $58 million. Number 9, Deni Avdija, 4-year, $55 million. Number 10, Jalen Smith, 3-year, $27 million. That's $9 million a year average. We'll talk about that in later. Overall, most of the first round picks from this class have resigned. Number 11, Devin Vassell, got 5 years, $146 million. Number 12, Tyrese Halliburton, 5 years, $206 million. Number 14, Aaron Nesmith, 3 years, $33 million. Number 15, Cole Anthony, 3 year, $39 million. Number 16, Isaiah Beef Stewart, 4 years, $60 million. Number 18, Josh Green, 3 years, $41 million. Number 19, Sadiq Bey, 3 years, $19 million. Number 20, Precious Achiuwa, 1 year, $6 million. Number 21, Tyrese Maxey, 5 years, $203 million. Number 22, Zeke Naji, 3 years, $32 million. Number 25, Emmanuel Quickley, 5 years, $175 million. Number 26, Peyton Pritchard, 4 years, $30 million. Number 28, Jaden McDaniels, 5 years, $131 million. And number 30, Desmond Bane, 5 years, $207 million. That's a lot of draft picks getting paid. And I know that entire sequence was a mouthful and maybe unnecessary, but it gives a lot of context in my opinion. I won't dive deeper, but a few second round picks from that class have also been given new deals. Now, in examining most of these contracts against the backdrop of what the Cavaliers can reasonably offer without hamstringing themselves in luxury tax oblivion, a few deals stand out in particular. Namely, Zeke Naji's making $10.6 million per year, Jalen Smith is making $9 million per year over the next 3, and Peyton Pritchard is making about $7.5 million on average over the next 4. All of these deals fall between the $8 to $10 million per year deal that Okoro has reportedly been offered. Now, I'm not saying that he should just take a similar deal, but in this market, it might be all he can get. Taking a look back at the last 10 5th overall picks prior to Okoro, and immediately you see a trend. People are getting paid. First, there's his own teammate, Darius Garland, who received the biggest extension in team history at that time after an all-star season. Then there's Trae Young, paid. 2017, De'Aaron Fox, rookie scale max extension. 2016, Chris Dunn declined his qualifying offer and signed for $10 million over 2 years. 2015, Mara Hezonja didn't get paid. 2014, Dante Exum, 3 years, $33 million. 2013, Alex Len signed qualifying offer only to end up signing a 2-year, $8.5 million deal. 2012, Thomas Robinson, not paid. 2011, Jonas Valanciunas, 4 years, $64 million. In 2010, DeMarcus Cousins, 4-year, $65 million, which, if I'm not mistaken, at that time was the rookie scale max. So 4 out of the 10 5th overall picks before him didn't get the bag. 5 actually did, and 1 got a decent pay increase in the case of Dante Exum for the time. Now, I am sure he's looking at all the money that has been handed out over the last 1 and change or so to his peers and is wanting a piece of the pie, but he may have to settle for less for financial security. This is a big decision for him to make. The contract implications, the uncertainty of his development, the ever-shifting role, the change at head coach, the new CBA, the place in which he was drafted, the franchise to which he was drafted, roster construction, all of these things have combined to create a rather difficult contract negotiation. And it shouldn't be lost on anyone that part of that second contract isn't just about what a player has done, but also the potential that he has showcased and the idea that he will eventually morph into the player that is actually worth the money he is being given. Is Isaac Okoro worth the type of patience it may require him to reach his full potential? I think so, but the Cavaliers are in a position where they must be very selective about the players they are willing to go above and beyond for. Is Okoro worth starting the proverbial tax clock by heading into tax territory? That is a question that they must grapple and determine the answer to. As currently constructed, they only roster 12 players. Ice would make that lucky number 13, or perhaps in this case, unlucky number 13. The team is little over $10 million from reaching the first apron. If Okoro signs that qualifying offer, they would be over. They don't appear to want to begin their tax clock before most of these newly handed out extensions kick in. So if Ice does come back on the qualifying offer, then we can almost assuredly expect him to dump some salary on the margins in some form or fashion. The same can be said if they end up going over the first apron with any potential multi-year deal he could sign with the team. They will do whatever they must do to stave off that tax clock. Ty Jerome comes to mind in this context. They could always pull the offer, I suppose, and use the money to try and fill up the roster, but at this point in the offseason, those free agent options just ain't there, man. They're not. It's the bottom of the barrel of an already weak free agent class. I think most signs point toward him donning the wine and gold heading into the 2024-25 campaign, at least to begin the season. But even if Okoro does return, just how big of a role will he actually occupy? Just how much patience will Kenny Atkinson have with him, considering he has no ties with him at all? These are all relevant and reasonable questions to ask. Time will tell how this plays out. Hopefully it's resolved sooner rather than later, because I would hate for this to drag out longer than it needs to, but I do understand the process. It's not as if we haven't seen this whole situation play out before. Unfortunately, it is a common occurrence in this sport. It happens. It's just the business side of basketball. With that said, as always, tell you guys, if you'd like to reach out, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you want to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot of said review to itscavalier53@gmail.com, and I will send you an invite. If you want to support the podcast in a small but helpful way, consider hitting that like button and subscribe if you're new here. And if you want to take it a step further, consider becoming a member over on Patreon. That said, go Cavs.